today I get the opportunity to sit on the interview side of things and have a conversation with Mike about a recent trip that he took, like within the last week, right, Mike? You returned from Uganda.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And went with our dear friend James Harrington with his organization called the Ugandan Water Project. And James has known Mike for a very long time, like decades. And he has been working that entire time trying to figure out how he can get Mike to get his boots on the ground. And for all of you guys, you are in that perspective, right? Like if you work in another international location, you know the secret to the sauce is get them there. And James knew that when he told me that Mike was actually going on a trip, that he had put his security deposit down. He was saying, yes, I'm going to do this. I was like, I am so stinking excited because I knew that Mike was probably most likely like 99.9% sure that Mike was going to have a transformational experience. And so today we get to talk through a little bit about Mike's experience. And also I get to kind of pry a little bit into what's going on in Mike's head as a donor to their ministry. So, Mike, just from your own perspective, why did you not go on the trip when he asked you? Like, he's probably asked you a dozen times to go.
Yeah. He's asked me a lot over the last couple of years, and the timing just didn't work out. Like, I've never been to Africa, let alone Uganda. I didn't really know anything about Uganda. And I was like, well, it's your organization. I support the organization because of you. You could give me 10 tries. I wouldn't be able to pick out Uganda on a map. And so my connection to the organization was more through my friend, James. It was, just a personal relationship, which I know a lot of folks can identify with that. The timing just didn't work out. Going to Africa is a long trip. Then you count the jet lag on the way back or for the several days. So I was like, this is kind of like a 2 to 2.5 week commitment, all up, all in. And they usually took these trips during seasons where I was really busy. So it just never materialized. He finally said to me, look, February, tell me a week that works. I'm going to plan the whole trip around your schedule. You better come. And I was like, okay, here it is. And then that's how it happened.
That does not surprise me at all because I would probably do the exact same thing. So
I feel honored that you guys think that I'm that important or something, whatever. But
yes.
I couldn't say no at that point.
I do want to just say for those of you who have asked some people to come on trips in the past and they've said no, I just want you to hear from Mike that it's not a no, I hate you. I don't want to go on your trip. Please stop asking me. It just, the timing doesn't work out. Maybe they have kids, maybe they have grandchildren. Maybe their jobs are too stressful and the fact like leaving for an extended period of time is just not even possible. So now here you are, a couple of weeks out. I remember you saying, I feel like a part of me just wants to not go. You said you made that comment, but what was going on internally for you as you were preparing for this trip?
I was like, it's so far. I'm so busy trying to get everything done before I leave. I know when I'm over there, I'm not going to get anything else done. There's no way. Maybe I should have picked another time, but he picked the time for me and so did I. So I was like, I can't get out of it now. And I think there's a difference when you know that something is pushing you outside of your comfort zone. It's not always easy to go do these things, but it's probably going to be worth it. It's probably going to be really good. And other times where you know it's just not good, not going to be good. And it's like, oh, why did I sign up for this? I knew it was the former. I knew it would be great. I knew it was going to be a lot of work. And that's what I was more dreading, if anything.
Well, and time is, from my perspective, watching you, is time is actually more precious to you than the money. Like
Yes.
you can drop money, here, you need a donation. Like to you, I see how generous you are and you're more than happy to support and to help people. But this is a very unique situation. We're now not just asking for financial commitment, which you did have to make, but it is your time. I think sometimes people forget that somebody like you, a higher net worth donor to an organization, that it's like, oh, to get them on that mission trip, that would be easy. It's actually easier, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it easier to ask you for cash than it is to ask you for your time?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's just send it. Hey, we'll get some projects together where we can raise some money for you guys. but stepping away from day-to-day life, it was just difficult. It was difficult. And I probably knew that it was going to be impactful and transformational. And sometimes people don't want to change. You don't want to be impacted. You're like, oh, I got enough going on. I don't want to evolve again or grow again. And there are elements that there's a real psychology to that. I think that a lot of us who are tuning in today, like, need to understand that some people who are, hopefully somewhat aware of what they're going to experience, even though they don't know exactly what's going to happen, they know it's going to be impactful. And sometimes you just don't want that. You just want, like, okay, can I get a second and a moment to breathe and just let life be life? And sometimes God's like, no, you're going.
So good. Love that. Okay, so tell us what happened.
Yeah, we got over there. It was essentially the way he framed it was that it was a leadership advance. It was a leadership, getaway retreat. And so myself, 3 other gentlemen were on that trip. I think we had a bigger group. It's not just guys either. It's guys and gals, but a couple of people had to bow out because they had schedule conflicts or something came up with family. So it ended up being a small team of 4. Then James took us over there. So it was a party of 5. And we met with their local team, the Ugandan side of his organization. Essentially, what Uganda Water Project does is it provides clean water initiatives all throughout the country. And this is really important because outside of Kampala, which is basically the one major city in Uganda, there isn't really a public works system like we would understand in America, where there's plumbing and really accessible water and sewage everywhere. The homes that we visited, the villages that we visited, they were either scooping up water in a jerry can that had accumulated in essentially a puddle that was runoff water from the hill. So this is as if you were in America, you had a real big rainstorm. You said, good, water is collected in that big puddle over there. Let's go get some water, and you scoop it up and bring it back home, and that's what you drink. Like, that's literally what they do. They don't boil it because boiling water requires something to burn to start the fires. They don't have stoves the way that we do. So they don't even boil the water. They just are used to being sick. That's one way that they get the water. Second way is they will collect water when it rains and it runs off from the roof of a building. They have a gutter like you would have at your home for like actual rain, but you don't drink that water. Well, it accumulates down into a tank or a bucket off of the roof, and they drink that water. And then third, they'll dig a well, or they call it with what they call a borehole. They'll just call it a borehole, and they're boring down into the ground, and they're accessing water. So this is how these communities drink water. This is their water source, and it is not boiled or purified as much as you would think it is, because they don't have the wood, they don't have the leaves to burn, they don't have a plate. If you're just randomly thirsty, you're not going to be like, okay, well, let me start a fire and wait for 15 minutes for this fire to kick in and for this water to boil, and then I'll drink that glass of water. They don't do it. Human beings are like creatures of convenience and time. And so whatever. I get sick all the time anyway. It's just part of life here. And that's how they live. So that was shocking. Shocking.
Isn't that crazy? I was just going to mention real quick, as far as his organization too, Ugandan Water Project was basically just a service project of his church. And he often tells a story about how it started with a barbecue and how it has expanded into what it is. But over the course of the last 14, 15 years, this organization went from a church project of just being under the church organization, like, let's go help some people in Uganda, to being a full-fledged 501c3 nonprofit organization. And it's now, it exceeded $2 million this last year. So I just want to give some scope on the scale of this, but also that it started just as a small project from the church and evolved over the years.
Yeah. I was really impressed with James. Now, I'd known him over 20 years. I always knew he was a sharp guy. If he ran a company, he'd be a multimillionaire. Like, the way that he runs his organization, the culture of the team that's on the ground, I'm like, wow, he had to hire all these people. He has to raise money. He has to cultivate relationships with local government officials in a different culture, in a different country, all from upstate New York where he normally lives. He has to get all of these parts and put together these construction crews and repairmen and buy vehicles. Now, he doesn't do all this himself, but I'm just saying this is the scale of the operation that I saw, and I was really, really blown away.
I'm curious, just Mike, as far as your perspective, because talking about James, I mean, James is the person that most of our viewers, listeners, you guys are that person. So tell me some of the characteristics that James does have that drew you in. And when you're thinking about the 3 other people that were on the trip with you, just as far as the relationship that he built with not only you, but them as well, what kind of characteristics did you see that might help our listeners?
Well, in James first, I just knew the guy was a winner. He did things with excellence. As long as I've known him, and he's done things really, really well. He's a go-getter. You will never see him sit still. So if I were to distill that down, I just know he's going to work hard. He's not going to sit around and wait for things to come to him. And so, whatever you send in terms of support is not going to sit idly by. He's going to put it to use. He's very resourceful, very efficient. I knew that about him. He always found ways to repurpose things. There was never anything wasted. They have a stockyard because they have so many different parts for these wells and the other trucks that they have. And there's just a lot of stuff that they have. So they have a stockyard, and we toured the stockyard, and the shelves in the stockyard are made out of pipes that they didn't throw away from wells that they were fixing. So the pipes went bad. They cleaned up the pipes. They kind of, repurposed them, shaped them, welded them, and that's their shelf rack in the stockyard. So he just doesn't waste anything. He doesn't say like, okay, let's throw this out. So that was really impressive in that regard. You know that they're going to get the most out of everything. They're going to squeeze every last drop out of everything, including your dollars. So that was really cool. As for the folks that he invited on the trip, there are 3 guys. A gentleman named Mike, who had a background in the Navy, is basically a captain of a ship for a long, long time. So this is a high-performing person. A gentleman named Rich, who spent over 20 years in high-end culinary in New York City. So he's a restaurateur. So this is someone who really understands how operations work. And the third fellow was a guy named Dan, who's an architect. So all real, sharp, skilled, experienced people who James felt could add certain things to his team and to his group and to each other. Essentially, all our meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, were not open conversations. They were intentional conversations where a certain person was assigned to share something. That included all of us, and it included members from the Ugandan team. So it wasn't like we were coming in as people from the United States and we have all the answers. I was learning just as much from the people on his team as they were from me. I thought that was really cool. It was very intentional, very structured. Even the days of our schedule, we had way ahead of time. We knew what we would be doing every day. And it was very well thought out. The first couple of days were pretty intense in terms of a lot of physical labor. Not that we know what we're doing, but he wanted us to get our hands dirty and get our boots wet to see what people have to put up with and what his team has to go through in order to provide some of these solutions. On one day, we walked about 4 football fields down this hill. We were at a school, young kids, and just carrying an empty jerry can, went up to essentially a swamp. I had to stick the jerry can into the swamp, fill it with swamp water, and carry that thing back 4 football fields up the hill to the school. Well, that's what 3rd graders do during the school day. Instead of sitting there and learning English and math, they're spending sometimes an hour of their school day just going to fetch water. And so to see how wasteful that is in terms of time, like this is their education and they weren't getting to do that. So that was a big part of what James wanted us to experience. He wanted us to see what it felt like to actually have to live this way.
Yeah. Something that I pull from what you're saying here, though, is like initially when you said he's a winner, like he could be running a multi-million-dollar business. Like James is a winner. So many times you and I come across people who are, they are winners. I think every single one of our viewers are winners. They wouldn't be doing the work that they're doing. Other people wouldn't have said, hey, you should do this as a job if they weren't a winner. But Mike, I think a lot of people come off as being very desperate. And did you ever feel that when you were on this trip with James?
No, in fact, I remember one time at dinner, he kind of flipped the tables. He's like, "You guys are lucky to be here with our team. Like, we don't invite slouches on this trip. It's invitation only. This is not a tourist experience. We believe that you have something of value to add to us, but we also have value that we can add to you. And let's grow together." And I think some people could be turned off by that stance. I thought it was very refreshing. I was like, you go, have confidence in yourself. And that's what I would say to anyone watching or listening. Have confidence in your ministry. Know that God has called you to it and don't apologize for it. Let people know that what you're doing is impactful, it's meaningful, it's intentional, it's well thought out, and you do it in a spirit of excellence. And invite them to be a part. I felt privileged to be there. And I think there's a lot that folks could learn from that mentality. Now, you've got to build it so that you can mean what you say. Well, do it in excellence. That's one thing I really exhorted his team. I told them, guys, I see so much excellence in the way that you do things. This gentleman, Rich, said the same thing. He was actually sharing a lot of illustrations from his time in the restaurant world with how things are set up at tables and how particular everything is. We're just like noticers of all that stuff. I said the same thing from a marketing angle. And one of the things that I said to the team during one of my sessions, I was like, game recognizes game, a pro recognizes a pro, and you guys are pros. I want to acknowledge that. I see the spirit of excellence that pervades everything that you all do. And that's enough for me to be able to go back home and tell everybody your dollars are going to a really great cause and being put to great use if you support this organization. I've been there. I've seen it. I vouch for it. I would, if it was God's leading, I would probably work for them full time. Like, I would be open to that if that was what I was supposed to do, because I know the excellence by which they do everything.
Yeah. What a testimony, right? Like everybody who goes on a mission trip and who runs those organizations would love to get that kind of a review from an experience. And if you are in the early stages or even planning a trip sometime soon, I hope you're paying attention. That it's like the details do matter. And when you just throw things together, people are paying attention to that. And it's the same thing with your little stuff. It doesn't have to be a mission trip. It could be your communication. Were you intentional about your communication? Were you intentional about the storytelling? And I know, P.S., James Harrington served as a coach in our organization in Fully Funded for years with us. And every time he showed up, that was just the DNA of who he is. But he delivered that on a small scale and he delivers it on a big scale. So I'm just saying, I just want to highlight the fact that whether you are a one-man show and you are trying to raise your funds and you are trying to share your mission alone, the excellence starts now. It doesn't start when you're a $2 million organization. It starts now. And if you're running your ministry with a spouse, if you're running it with your family, if you're running it with multiple families, whatever that looks like, you all have to be in agreement that you are stewards of something really, really great. Otherwise, why are you doing this work?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. A pro is at their best regardless. And people notice that. He could give us the greatest pitch on why we should support. But if we just saw that everything was in shambles and not run well and handled irresponsibly, that speaks so much, especially to people with trained eyes. Like I've seen that through marketing. Rich saw it through the restaurant world. Obviously, this other guy, Mike, who is a captain in the Navy. These are all people who are very, very attentive to detail. efficiency, organization, culture. And I was really impressed by the guys that I met there. And we were fired up while we were there. And I was like, hey guys, let's really help this organization. Like whatever I can do to help you talk about your experience better, you let me know. So I'll probably write up some templates for them just to, hey, here's my time in Uganda and this is kind of what I felt, and empower them, because that's one thing I can do. We went to a plot of land that James and the organization had purchased, and they're expanding their office space. Well, Dan was there. He's like, yeah, I remember seeing photos of this, and he had made some recommendations on these architectural drawings. And so for him to see it, he's like, yeah, this is the plot of land that I do those sketches for. Really impactful and very intentional on James's part. Everything there has a story, or should have a story. There are so many stories happening around you, your ministry, your day-to-day life in the ministry. We often overlook it. It could be as something as small as a soccer ball that I was pumping full of air in the van before we got to the school. That soccer ball has a story because we're going to share this with the kids. We're going to hang out with them. Or it could be as big of a deal as a huge water tank that they were building and installing at the school. Everything has a story. You just have to notice it and tell people about it. Imagine someone asking you, hey, what's the deal with that soccer ball? You're probably going to explain it a certain way. Hey, what's the deal with that water bottle? Oh, yeah, there's a story behind this. James got this for me because it's white, because he noticed I'm buying a lot of white things lately. A couch, a car, my shoes, they're all white. He's like, so I picked out a white water bottle for you. And I was like, wow, that's really thoughtful. Everything has a story. I think we all think that it has to be a Saul on the road to Damascus type of story. It doesn't. It can just be a very little thing. And if you just imagine someone asking you, hey, what's the deal with those sunglasses? Or what's the deal with that little camera thing that you've got going on there? You'll probably explain what it is and just get better at noticing how to do that.
Yeah, so good. I also was just thinking as you were talking about just the details that you're seeing, because that's your gifting, Mike, right? Like you were videotaping a lot while you were there. You mentioned to our group that everybody's like, you know, you videotaped a lot, but the other people around you was like, why you always got your phone out? No, why you always, and you were like, you're going to thank me later, you know, but like your natural tendency is to see the stories because that's just how God hardwired you. The architect, he was going to look at the land, you know, all the other guys, they're going to see from their perspective, and then they're going to be able to bring people along that are going to be like-minded like them. So that's really beautiful. I wanted to share real quick because we talk a lot about gift giving and about like honoring and recognizing your donors and those sorts of things. You mentioned that James bought you a white water bottle, and it wasn't just like when you first said it, I was like, oh, you bought everybody white water bottles, you know, but he is actually very intentional. And you and I were putting on an event called the Fully Funded Summit. And we were recording and, you know, interviewing a lot of people in the fundraising space, you know, Steve Shadrack, some of your marketing guys, some of our students inside of the program. And James actually mailed me hiking poles for the summit. I don't even know if I told you this.
No, you didn't. That's crazy.
Like he literally mailed me, like, I am cheering for you as you climb the summit. And it was like, you know, just
So thoughtful.
He's so
That doesn't
thoughtful.
surprise me.
Exactly. And I think sometimes people are like, well, what kind of gifts do I get? It's like, not just I found this book and I mailed it to 100 people. It was like, no, and obviously you only you're highlighting some of the ones that are with you for the long haul. And we can talk all about this on relationships, but it's just, you pay attention in people's lives, and whether it's reaching out to them and saying, I'm praying for you, or you actually, you know, buy them a physical gift that commemorates something that they're doing in their life, a gift, a loss of a loved one, a white water bottle. It's just, you know, you're paying attention. I think that is also just an incredible quality that James has and that we all can learn from. So anyways, on that note, Mike, just any ahas that like you want to make sure that our people hear, because I know sometimes we don't always get a chance to hear it from a donor perspective.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I noticed woven throughout the whole trip was that they just really care about this cause. Like they are sold out to this vision. That's undeniable. And when you combine passion with intention and competence and excellence, when it's like passion plus excellence, you're going to do great things. Like, you can't help but be blessed and grow. I really believe that. I didn't see any person on his team, regardless of the role that they had, who was just like a bench player. They all took their role really seriously. It could have been the guy driving the trucks. It could have been the construction guys that were repairing everything. I saw one of the captains like on the cruise, and he let his team have it because they coiled the hose the wrong way. Because it would like mess up. It would
Cost money.
result in more wear and tear.
Yep.
They're like, hey, you guys didn't coil this the right way. And he's like, yeah, he's giving it to the team right now. He's one of the Uganda guys. And I was like, no, that's good, because I know how to coil things because all my years in music. You got to wrap those mic cables the right way. This is another aspect that I thought was so cool. They eat lunch together every day at the headquarters. If they're not out on a job, they're in the headquarters eating lunch together. And they have someone who's a full-time chef. She cooks for everybody. So we were eating good homemade food, and we're just hanging out with everybody. It was a very like family environment, but a big team. And they just never lost that culture. So when you are hanging around with any of them, you can sense like, this is my country. I'm not going to let this problem go unsolved. We have a vision and a passion to solve this. Let him do what he does well. Like, I sat in on a couple meetings with government officials, and I'm like, how did you get to know these people? He's like, little by little over a long time. I was so impressed. So that to say, I didn't see any slouches on the team, and I spent a good amount of time with these folks, and that was super impressive. So if you're still burning white hot for your mission, for your ministry, for what the assignment God has given you, that's great. And then learn to put that and use that as a lens by which people view how you do things and the excellence by which you do it. So that was so clear to me. These folks are sold out to what they're doing. Yeah.
So good. I love that. And I think that that is a testimony to the DNA and the cultural, just values of an organization. For many of you guys, your sending organizations are giving you some of those values, and there's some of that DNA there. But if you feel like we could be doing this, take it up a notch. My coach always told me, show up filled up. And I think that was such a great advice, that it was like, show up. When you show up filled up, like you are serving the Lord, and it's like, and whatever results after that, that is not your responsibility. So, and that's what I hear from what you're saying, is like, they show up filled up, they are coming with their best, and they're working for the Lord. So it was
awesome.
Why wouldn't you bring it, right?
It was awesome. I love that. I loved it. I was like, man, you guys, I'm going to do my best to do what I can do to help you guys grow. So that's pretty incredible.
Love it. All right. Yeah. Well, shout out to James and his team. We love what you guys are doing. And thank you guys for everyone who's listening to this conversation on YouTube. You're listening on our podcast. You're supporting the work that we're doing. Mike and I are committed to helping you get fully funded. That's what this channel is all about. So if you're enjoying the show, please tell a friend, invite others to listen in, subscribe if you haven't done it. And we just look forward to continuing on the journey and helping you get fully funded. So we'll see you on the next one.